Westminster is essentially a cesspit for this stuff, and it feels like nothing's really being done about it. I mean, the ICGS was formed, I think, 5 years ago, following
After
the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
And since then, it's not done enough. It's not done enough to allow staffers like myself to feel confident in the process that's there to protect them. And frankly, it takes too long. I think we've seen recent reports that it takes over 200 days to complete a complaint. And that is too long. Victims could still be working in the palace, perhaps for the person that they've complained against, or within this environment to the person they've complained against. And they're waiting up to a year or close to a year for any kind of justice or result from that. And
Which is a ridiculously long amount of time.
Well, it's just not good enough. It's not. And people, come to me following what my piece with Newsnight and have said, I completely agree, and this has happened to me, but I don't feel like I can talk about it. And that to me is just so upsetting, but also frustrating that we don't have, with the greatest democracy in the world, frankly, and we can't seem to allow people to feel confident enough to say, this happened to me, and say, okay, yeah, we'll sort that out and we'll get that for you. We'll sort that for you.
So you started working in Parliament in 2019?
2020, yes.
After the election.
After the election, yeah.
And just describe to me the atmosphere, but also how quickly you realised what the real atmosphere was actually like.
It was within weeks. I was having a drink after work, as most people do, and I said, oh, is there anyone that I should be a little bit cautious of? And I didn't mean it in the sense that when the way they replied, they reeled off a list of names.
And why did you ask the question in the first place? Because you got a whiff of something, or...
Well, Westminster's got that reputation, let's be honest.
Right.
And I felt it about me. And politics is a sleazy game, shall we say. Some people play it fairly and some people don't.
Yeah.
So I asked that question just along those grounds. And I was given a list of people's names, what they've done, why I should avoid them, how to interact with people. And that
from all parties?
Yeah, all parties, all positions, from staffer to MP, lobbyist, anyone within Westminster, someone had a name on there. And that to me kind of set off a real annoyance that, we know these people do this stuff. We all talk about it. It's the rumours spread across the palace, and yet nothing can really be done. And, I can't go out and cry wolf at every rumour I hear, but it is frustrating that when something comes out in the press, you say, oh, did you hear this? And someone will go, yeah, I knew about that ages ago. And so it seems just people can run rife without any repercussions.
And this includes people who are quite senior in government?
Yeah, of all parties. Of all power, it happens. And people don't feel confident to say anything about it.
And did it happen to you as well?
I've experienced a lot. I've witnessed a lot. I think that, I'm not here and I'm not a victim to much. And I think what I have witnessed in terms of an experience, the hand on the hip, the hand on the leg, the brushing of the arm, the standing too close to you in the bar, inappropriate comments, asking if I'm cold because I'm wearing a short skirt. I mean, and by short skirt, I mean above the knee. It's stuff like that whilst people listening to this might think, that sounds like nothing, that's the surface level of the problem. It's so much more than that. And I wanted to be the voice to the people that don't feel like they have a voice. So many people have said to me, I can't say anything, I can't talk
because they
about
feel that if they do say something, there might be repercussions against them, and the complaints process won't help them anyway.
Exactly, and you can be seen as a problem. And Westminster needs to change the culture that the person who reports something is a problem. No, the person who's done something is the problem. And I think for too long, that culture of let's just shush this person and protect our friend has gone on for far too long, and I'm sick of it.
It's really interesting. I mean, in private industry, this would be totally unacceptable. We've seen this recently. The Financial Times, the stuff on Chris Minodi and his hedge fund. He's in massive trouble. This is a fund named after him. Allegations against him, and basically he's losing his fund, might lose his job, lose a fortune in the process. There are many other examples in the private sphere where this would be unacceptable. Why is it still tolerated in our elected chamber?
I think it's because until people report it, you can't do anything about it. You can have the hearsay and you can have the gossip, but until someone says, this happened to me, you're not going to get anywhere with it. You can't investigate a conversation that happened that's just speculation. But the problem and the root of the problem is people don't feel they can report it. So the processes in place, whilst they have improved over the last 5 years, they're still nowhere near good enough.
I mean, I've spent many hours in Westminster, and there is something extraordinarily, literally quite Gothic about it. It feels very old-fashioned. It feels a bit dark. It feels a bit murky, but also that it's a hallowed historic institution. I just wondered, when you walk in there, or when your friends or colleagues who've experienced this walk into that building, do you immediately tense up because you think something might be happening?
I mean, you can be overwhelmed by how beautiful the palace is. It's a historic place, and it's absolutely outstanding to work there. But yeah, you do kind of feel a little bit on edge when you see someone and you think, oh, I know that they've done this, and you're in the lift with them and you're thinking, could they do it to me? One of my colleagues told me a story about how he got in a lift with someone and he just was ogling them in the lift, and it made him feel uncomfortable. And I think these tales are way too common, and they've just become commonplace. They've just become part of the culture, part of the job. It's like, oh yeah, these things happen. We can't really do anything about it.
So you work for Deanna Davidson. There are hundreds of female MPs in the House of Commons. Presumably they're on side and they support you. So I wonder why they're not. I mean, are they getting involved in terms of rectifying the situation?
There's a huge camaraderie amongst all of the women in Westminster, and I think that comes through all walks of life. Across society, women have to band together to support one another through these things.
But are they doing that in the House of Commons?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Deanna's been a fantastic boss. I left her office for 6 months and came back because I loved working for her so much. And I love working in Parliament. And people might think, listening to this, God, she's absolutely crazy sitting here moaning about the culture and saying how bad it is. And yet she will return to that place. And frankly, I'm not afraid of these people, and I'm not scared, and I'm not going to let them push me out of a place that I love to work.
But so, Mari Black, who I know a little bit from having interviewed her, she's one of the, most intelligent, articulate, outspoken members of Parliament I think I've ever met. And yet the fact that she thinks it's too toxic to carry on working there is extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sad, and I think, whilst I'll never agree with Mari on her independence views,
right?
I totally agree with that. I can't help but agree with her, and I think.
And yet you're still working there, and you still want to carry on working
because
there.
I'm not going to let these people push me out. I'm not going to let them intimidate me, and I have a voice, and I'm going to use it for the people that don't feel like they can speak.
So, what do you think needs to happen?
I think it's a culture thing. I mean, fundamentally, the biggest thing is that the ICGS needs to do better.
The complaints process.
The Independence Grievance and Complaint Scheme. It needs to do better so that people feel they can speak up, speak out and get justice. But there's a cultural change that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And no one policy or rule or behaviour code or poster is going to change that. It has to start with people like me and people across Westminster. They have to start challenging this behaviour, calling it out when they see it, and doing more to protect the victims.
I mean, there have been dozens of people who've been, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, who've been part of that complaints process, members of Parliament and others. Do we know how many of them actually have been censored at the end of this very long process?
Well, I think the ICGS conducts under parliamentary privilege.
Right.
So,
but roughly, do we have some idea? No, we don't.
I don't know that.
Which may be another problem. I mean, confidentiality is important, of course.
Of course.
But at the same time,
communication from the ICGS in terms of these cases, in terms of how they are performing and everything like that, would be, I think, instrumental in relaying confidence to the staff across the estate. Because, I mean, to find out through an investigation that it takes close to a year or over a year for average for these reports to be finalised makes you feel like, what's the point? Something that happened to me for 15 minutes could take 15 months to get justice for. I'll get over it. I'll leave. And
you have to carry on working with the person who you level the complaint against.
Yes, exactly. And that's just not good enough. And in any other industry, this wouldn't happen. But the problem is there's 650 MPs, 650 ways to be an MP, and 650 different offices. And some of them run amazingly. So most MPs, if not, I would like to say all, but that's not the case, are incredible people. They're in it for the right reasons. They're excellent bosses. They're fantastic people, and they're just as angry as I am.
Now, I hear what you're saying, and I think the complaints are legitimate and obviously important, and the process has to be much faster. But do you think there's a danger that people will, listening to this program, say, well, all politicians are corrupt, they're all sleazy, And that's also something we don't want. We don't want to kind of, brush off the entire political process as something that's not worth it.
No, and as I said just then, there are hundreds of people in exactly the same mindset as me, that they are embarrassed that people are doing this, that there are a few people running around the place acting like this because they know they have no repercussions and they feel like they can.
And it's a minority.
And it is a minority. Not every MP is doing this. And I think because these people are acting in the way that they are and the processes aren't in place to discipline them from that, MPs are getting this reputation that they don't warrant. And I think that's partly why maybe Mari's left, is because there's this reputation that MPs have because of a small group of people, and they're just a bit sick of it.